For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mitch Simpler. I am a retired partner now at JB&B Consulting Engineers. And Nancy and I were privileged to be the co-founders of New York City, when it was New York City Builds BioPlus, and it's hard to believe 5 years ago. Fast forward to here we are. Now it is Metro Builds BioPlus, and we have associated group in Philadelphia, and with the ambition to grow to the Northeast through Boston, because we all have so much in common in terms of the development of life sciences. So, I want to thank our host today, Industry City. This is quite a facility, and I will be the first to admit that I've been in New York City for 46 years, in Brooklyn about 6 times. I'm actually involved in the hospital down the road here for NYU Langone, but I never go past the hospital. It's mostly ignorance. I grew up in Pennsylvania, don't know anything about New York. So, thank you all for being here. We have quite a packed schedule, and it is now my privilege and honor to introduce our host, Jim Somoza of Industry City.
Hi, I'm Jim Somoza, Managing Director of Industry City. Welcome to IC, our little tiny 6 million square foot project that we've been working on for a number of years. To give you a little history about the project and the buildings, you're actually sitting in a 100-year-old seaport. These buildings were part of a working waterfront seaport right behind you to the west here, New York Harbor. These buildings were essentially shipping containers before the advent of shipping containers. So before shipping containers, everything would come off boats in pieces and barrels and boxes and go onto train cars. Train cars would pull into our courtyards, which are actually old train stations. And if you when you walk on the sidewalks, you're actually walking on an old train platform. Everything would come into the buildings, get hand hoisted up. This was before elevators, sorted, stacked, etc., and go back out to trains or trucks off to the end user. Once you had shipping containers, you didn't need this step. This step was unnecessary. So everything moved to New Jersey, where you had a lot of land to do that, and these buildings sat underutilized for a better part of 50 years. So these buildings were actually at one time owned by Harry and Leona Helmsley, if anybody remembers any of those folks many years ago. Many stories of Leona and her famous dogs taking tours of the project. But it sat very underutilized for many years, not a lot of money put into it, very bad shape. The power used to go out multiple times a day, which was always fun. And we came along where I'm part of the group of Jamestown, Belvedere Capital, Angelo Gordon, amongst others. Various times we were the group behind Chelsea Market, Pond City Market in Atlanta, and others. And what we do is we do adaptive reuse. So we take old buildings that are past their useful life for what they were originally intended, and we redevelop them into something else. So in this case, what we've done is we've redeveloped it really into an office and retail, but still maker, manufacturing, and still plenty of warehousing and distribution. We went about, first step is what you're going to see a lot of today as you walk around on the ground floor, our food hall, which is right there. Obviously Camp David, which is our co-working space with offices up on the 5th floor, all of our courtyards, bakeries, bars, restaurants. I encourage you to go see Japan Village, which is our 40,000 square foot sort of Japanese eating, drinking playground, sort of. And Sahadi's, the Middle Eastern market right there. But what you do with a project like this, because there was no retail here. Like I said, these were all warehouse buildings. We set out to make a place on the ground floor for people to come and want to come and hang out. During the pandemic, we actually were discovered by a lot of people because of all of our outdoor space, and our indoor spaces behave like outdoor spaces, and we've actually been back to about 70-80% of the employees here are back in the office, which is a much higher percentage than other places, and we think that's in large part because of the community, all the amenities that we built, but really the community. People hang out. You go over to the Frying Pan, which was our first bar. It was basically our Cheers. That's where all the tenants hang out at the end of the day, and more business probably gets done there than anywhere else at IC. And so for all of you folks, we are working on a lot of biotech and life sciences type of uses here, which has a little bit more to do with the community than the technical aspects. I'm going to talk more about that on a panel this afternoon, but I encourage you all to walk around, enjoy, stay afterwards, go have a drink, go get something to eat, and explore. That's what this place is really about. So welcome, everybody, and have a good time.
Hi, everybody. I can't tell you how excited I am to be hosting this meeting today, because we called it the Engineering Biology and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and it's not often that you actually have a chance to be present at the beginning of a whole new era in what will build a more sustainable and equitable world. And we have that privilege today to go back to 2000 and really understand how this industry evolved, and then to take a close look at how Brooklyn and the greater New York metro area is emerging as a hotbed of the engineering biology companies and making all kinds of amazing products. Before I get started, I wanted to thank our founding members. These were 5 firms, as Mitch referred to, in 2018 that started the first Life Science Real Estate Symposium. And now we've evolved into an organization that looks at the entire ecosystem. But we couldn't have done it without the commitment of these 5 firms who were the pioneers in building life sciences in the city. Now we have a number of corporate members who make our programming possible, and so we want to thank all of them. We've got many of them in the audience today, so thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. I forgot our media partners. I'm sorry. Alex Philippidis, who has covered many of our meetings for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology News. He's always done a tremendous job. And Commercial Observer, who's been our media partner for the last couple of years. So I want to thank them as well. So this is a familiar slide. I've used it many, many times. And I actually used it to open the 2018 symposium, which was a meeting about how New York could re-envision its future using biology. And what I said was earlier in this decade, meaning in the 2000s, 2 giants of biology and technology, Craig Ventner and Steve Jobs, made predictions for the coming century. If the 20th century were the century of physics, Craig Ventner said, the 21st century will be the century of biology. And Steve Jobs agreed. He said the biggest innovations of the 21st century will be at the intersection of biology and technology. Today, we are 2 decades into that shift, and we are seeing the results of that in many of the companies that have been formed in producing new products for the world today. And the changes we're experiencing really are a 4th industrial revolution, representing the shift from physics and chemistry to biology. And consequently, this market is dynamic, changing, and evolving. Just to give you a little bit of history, and this is what I think is so exciting about today, because we get to look back to the year 2000, before synthetic biology, or engineering biology as it's called today, was even around. It was just questions in scientists' mind. And so GeneArt in the late 1990s, they were the first company that launched gene synthesis. And you may recall that Illumina and others were the first company for gene sequencing. So sequencing was about reading DNA, synthesis is about writing DNA. And that actually allowed a revolution to occur in science. And so some of the early scientists who made some of the very early discoveries, Jim Collins of BU published a paper in Nature in 2001 that was talking about a bacterial toggle switch that he could basically go into a cell and turn on to make it luminescent green. And it was really the first time that people had played with the genetic code inside a cell to try to change it. And then Tom Knight from MIT came around and had this concept about biobricks and how you could use DNA to build things like engineering. And so it was all in its infancy kind of between the year 2000 and 2006. And in 2006, the National Science Foundation funded an organization called SynBIRC, which became known as the Synthetic Biology Engineering Research Center. And it was comprised, this consortium was comprised of about 12 scientists from the University of California, Berkeley, Harvard, MIT, University of California, San Francisco, and later Stanford. And they came together with two objectives. It was a 10-year program. It was going to sunset in 2015, but they had two objectives. One was to create a new field of synthetic biology, and the second was to build an industry around it. And today we can see the results of both of those objectives, not only being fulfilled, but really starting to transform the world as we know it. So very, very exciting. When SynBIRC sunset in 2015, it released an explosion of innovation, starting with a number of nonprofit organizations that built programs that ultimately became global in nature, and many of them are here this morning, and we're going to hear from them. But the early ones, iGEM, SynBio Beta, Biodesign Challenge, BioFabricate, these were all kind of the pioneering intellectual fermentation of these ideas that had come out of SynBIRC being applied to new fields. And so it was really, really very exciting. My own journey with this technology began in 2010 when I founded the New York Genome Center, which was all about sequencing. It was a high-throughput sequencing center that involved 11 of the largest academic institutions in New York City, and it was all about reading the genome so we can improve therapeutics for public health and discover new ones. But there was a lot of technology involved in that as well, because so much data was generated by that sequencing that we needed to house it in a data storage facility, which we built a data center at SABE, very close to where the New York Genome Center was located. And when I left the New York Genome Center, the Sloan Foundation contacted me because they had been funding SynBIRC for 10 years also. They put $10 million into it, and they were wondering, what's next? You know, did our investment mean anything? So they hired my firm to do a strategic plan for synthetic biology in the United States. And we published one of the first research reports that was written on the industry, because what we found as we were interviewing people is that nobody knew what synthetic biology was, and they were scared of it. I mean, what is this synthetic stuff, right? It's all about, like, is this another GMO? Well, you know, what is it? And so we started calling it engineering biology, but what we realized was if nobody knows what it is, nobody's going to be able to understand what it can do and what the benefits for the world are. So we wrote this report that laid out how this emerging industry was growing and was about to transform the world, and that the U.S. had leadership in this field, but that other countries were close behind, and without some kind of a national strategic plan, we were going to fall behind. 10 years later, I think with many of the new initiatives that the Biden administration has recently passed, we're seeing that the U.S. is finally waking up and getting behind this biological revolution and making the investments across the country that will sustain it, and training the new workforce that will be able to develop the products and the companies that will move this forward. So it's a very, very exciting time. And if we could move to the next slide. Basically, what this is doing is it is actually transforming through technological change the way we work, the way we live, the way science is done, the way new drugs are discovered, and you are going to hear a lot about that today. So when we say it's the fourth industrial revolution, we're actually serious about that, and we're all here at the beginning. So welcome to all of you, and I hope you enjoyed today's programming. I'm just so thrilled to be in the company of the pioneers in this field, and we're going to hear some fun stories from all of them.